Call to order the Planning Commission regular session, Cape Charles Civic Center, 500 Tazewell Avenue, August 3rd, 2021. Roll call.
Grossman present.
Buda present.
Strube present.
McCoy present.
Holloway present.
D'Amico present.
Let it be shown that we have a quorum. Would you all please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm wearing this
Tracy, do we have
because of the
any,
Delta variant more than anything else. I'm fully
public
vaccinated, but
comments?
still, God only knows what's going
Son's
on.
a physician
I
and one
do
of his
not.
vaccinated
Hey.
patients in ICU.
You guys,
Right.
no public comments, all right? Consent agenda. Do I have approval of agenda format, of the agenda format?
I'd like to make a slight modification to the agenda if I could, since what we're going to be talking about tonight in terms of the bylaws for the Planning Commission have been driven largely by the need to get some reining in the public hearing and public comments that we have in the town that's talked about in Articles 9 and 10 and the attached appendices and all. So I would like to propose that we begin there with Article 9 and work through, and that we save Articles 1 to 8 for a work session as defined on page 5 of the Rules of Conduct in Town, because I think a lot of what's in Article 8 and all is brand new and kind of, for me at least, a bit of a surprise, and I've been thinking about it a lot, but I need some more to really understand some of the implications of what's being proposed. So I would like to say that we would start with Article 9 this evening. That's my request. And it does, from Article 9 on, there's no reference back to the first part for which you would need to know that. So they're sort of independent parts.
So,
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda format, and when coming to new business to discuss the bylaws, that we start with Article 9.
Second.
Okay. Thank you.
okay, so we have a motion and a second. Discussion?
And we can't actually vote on this tonight anyway,
We
right?
could.
No, you
So
can't. No, you
No.
cannot.
It's a
not for
30-day
30 days.
period.
You must wait at minimum 30 days
So,
on any proposed changes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes. Let me lead off here with minutes, please, okay? And then everybody else can chime in. Page 3, section 8.13. That's all right. 8.13, I say delete to make was. So if you look at it, it says, John Hosey said this was just to make was to ensure.
So you're recommending deletion of make was,
To
those two
make
words?
was, yep. So it'd be, John Hosey said this was just to ensure cooperation of the boards. On the same page, section 8.15. Standards needs to be, it says, Diane D'Amico said standard, it should be standards and guidelines. 4, 8:18. Okay, you have the word work in there, it needs to be changed to word. Let me find it. Ken Buda suggested removing the work primary.
Yep, got it.
It should be word primary. Page 5, section 819. Remove the. Okay, so it says, let's see,
Where are you again? Phil?
section 819.
819.
Michael Strube
Near
asked
the bottom of that page.
why the certificate of appropriateness was the change, was changed. So delete the, was changed.
Got it?
From by to.
Got it.
The my last comment is on page 6, first paragraph. Discussion and questions were as follows. Michael Strube thought this section looked strong. Diane D'Amico was concerned that section 8 was too adversarial. He thought it was the board gave way to the applicant. There's a thing in here where it says remove A, of the word A. Dennis McCoy said it was in line with the changes to say that HDRB was not a preservation board. Diane D'Amico worried that none of the history or characters would be preserved and added that the second sentence was not encouraging, and after much discussion on the commissioners decided to remove the last sentence and add a one pertaining, and add one, so remove the A, add one pertaining to the pre-application process.
Got it?
Okay, it's mine. Anybody else?
I move we approve the minutes with, as amended.
Second?
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the minutes as amended in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unfinished business? There's none? New business? Discussion of proposed revisions to the planning commission bylaws. Please note that any changes to the bylaws require a 30-day notice before these changes can be adopted. So, we just approved going to section 9.
Which is actually page 6, it looks like.
Yep.
Yeah. So if I may, Mr. Chairman?
You have the floor.
Please, thank you. One is just a procedural, since Tracy actually was able to observe from home last week, the Facebook feed, she did note it would help if we make sure we all talk into the mics, because there was problems for those on the Facebook side who can't always hear us, whether it's a council or planning commission, so.
And if I could also add, the town seal appears right
I
on
said
top
that
of.
too.
Yes,
I told her that.
yes, so we've made some notes and we're trying to get this communicated and see if we can make some improvements to the public viewing process, yes. So
Yeah,
we
just-
need to make sure we talk into our mics as
So
we
it's-
speak this evening.
Okay.
The last time I watched one of these, I agree, and part of the problem is that when it gets into a dialogue among the members up here, everybody wants to look at the person they're talking to, and so they can't speak into the microphone. So we have to remind ourselves, if I'm talking to you, I have to still also be in the microphone. So
Right.
that's the trick to do it.
It is the trick. So with that said, you are actually not my first board that I assist and staff with, that we have been looking at their procedures manuals, bylaws. You just are the second board I've hit with this. We started with the Board of Zoning Appeals. They are in the midst of doing their review and revisions to their manual. So I don't want anyone to feel like you were singled out for any reason. We are just working our way. I felt this was procedurally something that should happen, and noted this early on when I met with the town manager, that it was my intent to do this. So I just want to put that on the record. Nobody's being penalized for anything that's have recently happened. I just think this is good governance and something we should
Yeah.
be doing
I mean,
annually. So with that said, all the proposed revisions were put forward by me. They are not set in stone. They're meant for open conversation today, to add, edit, delete, agree, disagree. And as I said, I'd like to take the time, and you're required by your bylaws to wait 30 days before we can actually vote on any policy. If we need additional time beyond 30 days, we can do that as well. I just think we need to start the process.
Okay.
So we start with Article 9, which deals with hearings. And I assume that's the section you wish to start with, Michael? Because I know I've renumbered these articles. The hearings? Okay. So with that said, we are proposing some changes here. A lot of this is to mimic what has come out with the town council's policy as it relates to receiving comments and how meetings are being conducted. So I do want to walk through each section if that's okay, and we can stop and talk about it along the way. So I'll start with 9.1. Again, this just talks about, in addition to any requirements by law, the commission, following town council approval, may hold public hearings or meetings when it deems that such hearings or meetings are in the public interest. And the difference between those is for conditional use permits, rezonings, text amendments, those are all structured and required by state law as to
Right.
your public hearing
Right.
responsibilities for advertisement. There may be additional items that get referred from town council that they would like you to advertise, so that's why we've included that language in there. They may refer a community issue to you, talking about bike paths or something of that nature, that state law doesn't require you to advertise, so we wanted to give that language and flexibility in this document. Notice of a hearing shall be published in a newspaper.
Well, wait, whoa.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. However, it sounds to me like it says the commission following town council approval. So does that mean that we cannot determine that we want to have a meeting? Or we can determine we want to, and then if the council says no, we can't?
You can, it's just we're giving town council the right, because there are only certain things that right now, as your staff, that I know requires a legal public hearing. And public hearing is a really specific term and terminology. So you may want to hold hearings, and you may choose to advertise and gain input, like on the comp plan updates, that's all a public hearing requirement. But if you start researching and you're not sure, I'm trying to think of an example, you're interested maybe of wooing gambling boats to come here, and you want to go do some research and gain community input, you guys could advertise it. It's not a true public hearing, but it's a community meeting. There's a difference between a public hearing and a community meeting. So council may from time to time push an issue over to the planning commission saying, we'd like to get your input and have you review this beyond what is under your normal statutory requirements of responsibilities, topics you would take up and review. Everything from the capital plan for the town, to the comprehensive plan, to amendments to the comprehensive plan, to any number of things that may come before them. If there's something that happens to come across their bow first, they might say, we'd like to hear from the planning commission. We'd like them to schedule the public hearing and run that process for us. It's just not something that's called out in the Code of Virginia, but council is saying we're aware of this and we'd like you guys to take the lead and run on this and give us the advisory opinion back.
Katie,
So-
I think I agree with Diane in that the way this is worded makes it, to me, say that the commission has to get town council approval to hold a meeting. I think if we remove following town council approval and then added a second sentence, town council may also request
Okay.
that the planning commission,
Okay.
because to me, this sounds like we have to get approval.
Okay.
Anybody else disagree with that?
I think that's a good change, actually.
Yeah, I think
Okay, got
the
it.
town council can always, weigh in on something, but this almost makes them required to have to review it and not make a decision, that's all.
Well, let's talk about that. We had an example, and I don't know if it was a CUP, but formality said town council, without any knowledge of the subject, had to refer it to planning commission to work.
That's currently in the zoning ordinance. That's a requirement in the zoning ordinance that when a conditional use permit application is submitted to our office, it actually works its way through, is it a conditional use permit? I'm gonna get this wrong. It's a zoning map amendment. It starts with the town council,
Okay, so it's very specific to zoning,
Yes.
okay?
yes. Relative to everything else in terms of how we schedule public hearings, the zoning ordinance is dictating that process. So when a conditional use permit comes in, I notify you that we've received one, you get a copy of it, you then give me authorization to schedule it for public hearing. So we can never be, I don't have the authority to go ahead and
Right,
schedule the public
right,
hearing.
okay, all right.
Same thing, as soon as you take action, it gets referred over to the town council, they do the same process, they get notified that you've received it, you've acted upon it, and authorization is requested for town council to schedule the public hearing. So at a minimum, it takes 4 months to get a conditional use permit through the permitting hearing requirements. So, but you're right, it's the map rezonings that go to, that the ordinance is stipulating it goes to the council first. Okay, so if we're good on number 1 with that revision, 9.2, notice of a hearing. Sorry. So again, this is stipulated by the Code of Virginia. We felt it was important to put it in here because sometimes trying to refer people to the Code of Virginia is a little challenging, to say the least. So I stuck it right in here, just so that there's no question about this, because it's confusing. So we have to put an ad in the paper for 2 consecutive weeks. So there must be 7 days in between when it runs in the paper the first time and when it runs in the paper the second time. And then from there, it needs to be, the ad needs to be no more than 5 days before the public hearing, but no greater than 21 days to the public hearing. So we got some tight windows we work within to get the ads done to meet the legal requirements in the Code of Virginia. We wanted to build it right into your bylaws so that future staffing, if there's a change, isn't struggling to figure out what are the requirements, especially if you bring on somebody who may not be as familiar with the Virginia law initially.
So really, I mean, there's areas here that you're saying, this comes straight out of the Code of Virginia, so there's no need to discuss it. We just move right, understand it and move right on, right?
For that one, that is, even if you wanted to change, I'd tell you, no, you
Right.
cannot. On that one, that's a no.
No need to waste our time
Right.
proposing changes,
Right.
okay?
And if the code should ever allow us to move away from a local newspaper and just allow us only to do on the internet or our website, I'd make you aware of that, but so far that is not the direction they're headed
Okay,
in
thank you.
yet,
Yeah,
okay? So then moving down 9.3, so this is a new section for you, and this is something I think we talked about following our last public hearing process. And this really comes as a strong recommendation from me as to how, in my experience, I've been, if those who may not be aware of my own background, I'm 24 years now in local government. Almost all of them, so that's 21 years, all in senior management of county administrator or town manager. I've been through a lot of public hearings. I've never been to one where we take public comments first before we actually open the hearing and hear the matter and let the applicant present, let the staff present whatever work that they did in the research of the matter. So I am proposing a real game changer for you guys. So I want to walk through it.
Why? It's working now, why do we need to change it?
I would say it is not working
I
now.
agree with Diane, I don't think it is.
Yeah.
I don't think it worked this
Okay.
past time.
All
I
right.
mean, if the applicants, first of all, if Katie would have said, given a statement of what the actual zoning map change and the zoning ordinance change, and then had the applicants come up there and talk, we may not have had all the people because they were aware, right?
I challenge that because I know personally that there was an email campaign that brought a lot of these people here.
Well, I understand that,
Go ahead.
but I think what Katie is trying to say is that we're going to inform the public what's going on with this before they even speak. They had a lot of
Oh,
people.
absolutely, yes, okay.
Rearranging.
Set of context is
It's
nothing
just
else.
rearranging.
Right,
They're-
it's,
Yeah,
it is
okay.
rearranging, I'm not trying to stop any from being
No,
able
no,
to
no, I
speak their
understand,
minds.
I'm just trying to
I
understand that,
think
okay.
part of it is an obligation both to educate you, to ensure we've had a chance to really vet the issues.
Mm-hmm.
Because candidly, I try and write the staff reports as comprehensively as I possibly can, but sometimes you miss the nuance. And so actually doing a verbal presentation and having pictures and maps up, and especially now that we know we can do the PowerPoint, it's really helpful to ensure not only you guys are all clued in, but any members of the public are getting clued in to things that they may not have taken the time to go look at the agenda packet and read
Yeah.
through everything that's there. So let me kind of walk through the process first, and then we can come back and talk about each one, if you
Sounds good.
wouldn't mind.
No problem.
So again, to open the public hearing, we say the legal advertisement is read, public hearing is open. At that point, then, you turn to staff, and whoever that staff person is, the planning director, zoning administrator, or if that's been delegated to someone within the staff, they make the presentation. And it's not just what the staff feels, but they also lay out what was the case or application contents, so that we understand what the applicant is seeking, requesting, and then we also start to give the staff analysis piece of it, where we have looked at everything from your comprehensive plan to the current zoning ordinance, any other policy documents that are out there that may influence or be a part of that consideration. I'm turning to Bill for a second, because Diane just raised her hand.
I didn't.
Oh, I thought you
I
did.
raised my pen
Your
just
pen.
to make noise.
Sorry, okay.
You got some power there, woman.
Wow. I'm gonna take over.
And again, I just put in 15 minutes. I'm not saying that can't be extended, or if that's seen as an unreasonable amount of time, but again, that's typical. If you're doing a conditional use permit, that's typically about the amount of time it may take to make that presentation from start to finish. When you get into probably a little more complex items, it may require a little more time. We'll work that out in advance of each one of the matters, but generally
Okay.
15 minutes.
On
Okay,
nine,
Katie,
Yes.
you're saying two separate 15 minutes, not that the town staff, if they want to, can call in the applicant to provide part of your 15 minutes, but there'd be two separate 15-minute blocks.
No, on this one, it is only the staff presentation of the matter.
But then the next one says,
Then the next one is, so the staff lays it out, and I do this intentionally, and again, this has been my experience, I've done this a long time. I am not, from a staff, I am not advocating for the applicant, nor am I necessarily speaking against the applicant either. My first responsibility is I need to present the application as it came in.
Right.
I need to put their request before the body.
Right.
okay,
And then my next obligation is, as your staff person, to
Yeah.
say, okay, as part of our review and analysis, we looked at everything associated with this application that you are required to look at. We're looking at public safety, we're looking at access.
Right.
We're looking at how it relates to the comprehensive plan. Is it in conflict? Is it supported by the comprehensive plan? How does it relate to other zoning districts? How does it deal with, so I'm gonna say a conditional use permit. Did it touch on everything of parking,
Yeah.
lighting, landscaping, all of those elements? Did we really find it all there, or was it lacking
All the
in
due
some
diligence, right,
needs?
exactly, yep.
So that is our responsibility. So yes, my first obligation is to present the application as is, and then we show the analysis being done. And then while you're gonna see in the staff report, we have also provided a recommendation of action for your consideration. I won't delve into that at that point in time, because part
Okay.
of every staff
Okay.
report that we do is, well, here's our recommendation. This may be tempered based upon whatever comments come in from the public.
Right.
So that's what's envisioned in 9.3.2.
two.
Thank you. I'm having
and if
trouble reading my numbers.
if it's just a zoning text amendment, there is no applicant, right? It would just be the town that would present. in
That's
case.
correct. Well, the applicant at that case is the town council or the
Okay.
planning commission.
Right, okay.
And why, and so part of it is making that case. Why are we seeking this? What has driven the need or the request for a text amendment?
Thank you.
It could be the map amendment, again, there would be an applicant for that. It could be, as I said, there's the conditional use permit, the comprehensive plan goes through public hearings.
Right.
This also is part of this whole thing. So when we start to amend the comprehensive plan, some of it may not be controversial, some of it may be when we go to public hearing. Like your future land use map may get some interest, or your transportation plan, or your housing plan, any number one of those. So when you write out this process, you gotta think in mind who might be the applicant. And in this case, you might think, well, it's just the town. Well, the town council is a pretty important applicant. They have to also make their case for things too. And so they will also get that same right and representation in 9.3.3 to make their case for it. So while staff is making it from a staff analysis, we lay it all on the table and then we give our analysis, then the applicant, which would be the town council or their representative, the town manager, or if they've hired a consultant, they may want to step forward and really lay out why they're making these changes, whether it be text amendment changes or comprehensive plan changes that they feel should happen, or even map amendment changes could come from the town council, so. So are we good through 3.3? And again, I gave them the same amount of time, can always be extended based upon the complexity of the matter being discussed.
Will they have the obnoxious timer?
That's a,
I'm sorry, will they have the timer?
well, part of the enforcement is under the responsibility of the chairman, is to running the meeting. And so
That's right.
whatever steps,
So 15 minutes, and they have to be timed.
right.
I mean,
And I'm not
To be
saying that's a
fair.
bad thing, because again,
No.
I've worked for localities where we try and do it gently and gradually, and we give the nod to, say, the staff gives the nod to the chairman, the 3 minutes are up, but somebody's still talking, they don't get that, and then trying to interrupt them is hard to do from the dais. So I actually don't find the timer coming the way it was coming, the alarm going off was terribly offensive. It was universal to everybody. Everybody was treated exactly the same.
Absolutely.
Well, no, that's why I bring this up, because if you're gonna give a time frame to the applicant, then they need to be held accountable for their time frame, as well as the person who's coming up for 3 minutes. And the applicant was not held to their
But I
time
can't say
frame,
that we
so.
had a really firm, established time frame
yeah.
No,
as your process before.
Right.
right.
This is actually memorializing it, and we will, if this is where we head in the future, we will actually print out a rules of procedure for public hearings. And so we'll have a little cheat sheet that we'll be handing to the applicant, to everybody who comes in. This is how we're gonna do things. Yeah.
Okay.
And then during that 15 minutes, we do not ask questions. They have 15 minutes to make their case.
Yes.
And then I guess the next one, on 9.3.4 is where we would ask questions and.
That's correct. And so at that point, we come back to you and to the whole commission as a whole. Are there specific questions or clarifications you need either from the staff presentation or from the applicant presentation or their representative?
So, in some cases, and I've seen it in other, I did a little homework here, and I've seen it in other bylaws of other towns, is they actually, and I think you guys did it the 22nd, is went to the, started and say, you have any discussion on this? Do you have any discussion? Do you have any discussion? Do you have any discussion? You know, down the line. And sometimes they're even timed, so. but-
And it is important, and that's, I guess, really a role of the chairman is to figure out what's the process. It could be who wants to go first, or do you want to follow it, as you said, from one end to the other of the dais? That really becomes your responsibility, how you wish to convene that component of ensuring each board member has a chance to speak. So, I will come back and I don't need this in the bylaws, but I do want to make this a point. So I come back to the applicant for a second. They're making a presentation. We do require that if they're going to do any sort of PowerPoint, it needs to be provided 24 hours in advance to us. One, to ensure it doesn't have any viruses or infect us more than it has to. And to make sure there's nothing offensive in it that is
Okay.
contradictory, so.
Is it possible to get that earlier and distributed to us so we can study it, or?
We try and request that. I can't say it always happens that way, because I know I'm continuing to work with an applicant trying to help improve the information that they are bringing forward. Sometimes if it's plans or graphics, that gets a little tricky if they're trying to align with consultants to get it done timely. We will do our best to try and get it into the packet if we can. Otherwise, we will notify you it's coming, and how it's coming, and in what format. And we'll always make sure you get a hard copy of anything that didn't make it into your agenda packet, okay?
One last question. The applicant or their designated agent or legal representative, does that mean more than one person can speak, but they only have a total of 15 minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And again, when you're running the meeting, Mr. Chairman, it's ensuring that we've identified that, again, I'm having that conversation as your staff person with the applicant so that I know who's coming to speak on their behalf. If it's their attorney, if it's a real estate agent, if it's someone else, another partner is coming, I'm trying to get all their names so I know exactly who's gonna be speaking, and ensuring that if they really want the attorney to speak, maybe make him go first or something, because 15 minutes. So I am trying to kind of run that little gamut for you well before they show up here.
This should be interesting the next time Eric decides to bring another topic for discussion. Because that session with him was rather fluid.
Yeah.
You know, for that one, I'd say for 933, then perhaps you'd need to say the applicant, their designated agent, and/or legal representative.
Okay.
If you're saying all three can come up and be held within the 15 minutes.
What, why wouldn't you just leave it the way it is and say limited to a
Because it-
total of 15 minutes?
Because it says only one person.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay,
Okay. So, again, as we just said, 9.34, you have the ability to get clarifying questions or clarifying information to the applicant or the staff member. Then you open it for public comment. So now we've got all the information on the table from the staff and from the applicant. And at that point,
Okay.
staff sits down, the applicant sits down. And now the public comment period formally opens and we go to town, so to speak.
Now, do you need to add in here reading of comments emailed in?
Any comments that are received, whether
Well,
they
you're
are,
talking speaker here,
Yeah.
you know, 3 minutes to speak in accordance with.
we treat, so again, when we come back to your citizen participation appendix A, I think they address the difference between people who show up and speak in person versus those who choose to submit written comments and ask them to be read into the record.
I think if you read Appendix A, it says that if they're read into, if you have a letter and it's read, at
Yes.
3 minutes, it's over.
Right.
End. And the rest of that is not entered into the minutes. It's not there.
but I think I'm understanding what Paul is saying. This is just talking about speaking.
So-
Should
so
we say
to-
letters?
To speak or submit.
Yeah, right,
comments.
Yeah.
that's right.
Yes,
That'd be
yes.
good.
Speak
Yep,
or submit.
Yep.
And again, to make this really clear, and I think this would be the real difference between the way it's currently being done, where you get all your comments right at the start of an open meeting, and it's really an open field. It's comments on whatever is on somebody's mind.
Yeah.
The comments that I'm talking about here can only be related to the matter for public hearing. It can't be on anything else somebody wants to talk about or anything else on the agenda. It's only the public hearing that we're currently dealing with.
So this is one lever he has a chance to pull if somebody goes off topic.
Right,
Got it.
that's
Okay.
correct. So
Okay,
it's
good.
keeping us very constrained. We're
Yep.
only dealing with this matter.
Yep,
If it's a
okay.
conditional use permit, we're only talking about this, not about, you're talking about the bike path later down the road.
Right.
We have on the agenda another time to take up any other comments for things not part of a public hearing. Okay?
Okay.
Then, 9.3.6, so all the comments have now come in. And so we do provide 5 minutes at the end for the
okay.
applicant to rebut or clarify. We're not asking them to respond to every single comment. We really are trying to get them to stay focused, and where do they think something might have been horribly stated wrong and carried out the misperception at the public comment section. It really is meant to be limited to give their final, like, closing arguments, I guess is the best way to paraphrase it.
Okay.
Could it also be applicant and staff, because you may explain, like, people may have a comment that just doesn't apply, that it's better for staff to answer. It's not so much specific to the application,
Sure.
but more of our process or something along those lines.
Okay, we can do that.
So where are we putting it?
The applicant and staff.
Okay.
And to ensure we have
Right.
sufficient time, are each limited to 5 minutes. So that I don't want to push, the applicant from feeling he didn't have his sufficient,
Right.
he or her didn't have her
Yep.
sufficient.
I think you want to change is to are.
Yes.
Right.
The applicant
And staff.
and staff
Are provided.
are provided an opportunity to provide, each limited to 5 minutes.
Yes, right.
Okay. And then the next section, 9.3.7, we do want an opportunity for us to finally present what is our recommendation that was contained in the staff report. Again, as I write in most of these at this point, that we always list the caveat, while we made the recommendation, it was done prior to the public comments coming in. It may alter, or we may hear something that we would recommend further conditions be applied, or other terminology to our recommendation. But we want to have that opportunity to formally present that to you.
Would it be better than when you write up your proposal not to include a recommendation to that? Because again, that makes it appear to folks it's a done deal. But you might have
Right.
already written to be used,
Right.
but we don't enter it into the packet.
And so far, I've been hedging my bets, I guess the best way to phrase it. Sometimes I'm happy and comfortable to give a clear, flat-out recommendation to you, because I feel it's relatively clear-cut. There are others that I feel there's gonna be a little bit of controversy, and maybe I haven't thought of all the issues. I'm going to defer, and I'll write that. I'm doing that in the Historic District Review Board, in the BZA. Sometimes I'm doing it there too. I'm trying to outline, if I feel comfortable or don't feel comfortable making a recommendation at this point. One of the benefits of me giving you this, even a draft or staff recommendation of a proposed motion, is it helps you start to think what that kind of format should look like. And for me, I'm really big ensuring you guys make motions that are comprehensive, both in terms of any conditions, making sure I'm connecting the whole picture, and then not just connecting the whole picture, but also providing the supporting case why you are making that recommendation. So not just that you're in favor of it, but you're in favor of it with these terms and conditions, and here's why: because it's supported by the comprehensive plan. It's supported by this policy document. It's whatever it may be. I want to make sure you have the proper support, so that if things get challenged in court, because any of these matters that are moving forward for eventual consideration by town council has the ability to be appealed. And we want to ensure that we've done the proper legwork to make it the strongest case, if it should be passed or denied, that it can be hopefully surviving a court challenge. And I think that's part of my job as staff, is to get us positioned to do that from the council, from here all the way to the council level, is to get you prepared as best as possible. So that is why I feel really strongly on some of these. I want to help you do your motions, if not provide you a tentative motion is part of the staff recommendation. If you are uncomfortable with that, I'm okay. I can change and move away from that. I would then just say, please don't just wing motions without us verifying, did we really put everything in that we're supposed to have in, that really is our best representation of our conversation, discussion, and mindset
No,
moving
I
forward.
like you doing that. It's just that I wonder how citizens feel when they look at that, and it
Right.
looks like, well, why are we coming to this meeting?
Right.
It's already decided.
Right.
Oh, but some of that stuff is so clear cut,
Absolutely.
and you can lead with the lead-in of, based on the above information, contained in her report, this is what she summarizes.
All right. And so I'll make sure I temper my language in my staff report moving forward to make it really clear, while this is based upon this above information, it is without any consideration or input yet from public comments that may alter, that may impact, I won't say alter, may impact what the staff recommendation would finally be.
I just,
And I think one of the key things, and maybe the zoning text amendments really aren't the best example, but I look more to like special use permits, conditional use permits, things of that nature. If there are gonna be conditions that I would recommend, whether it be hours of operation, or additional landscaping requirements, or parking challenges, or noise, or whatever it may be, if I can articulate those as part of that process, that may help alleviate and temper the public's concerns as well, to know that I'm putting some of those items forward. And so, or they may say, that's crazy, how dare you do that too? They also may think I'm being way too harsh, or candidly, I'm gonna put out the third item of objection. How could your staff ever enforce something like this? You don't have the manpower to really put all these conditions on. And those have to be realistic considerations from our point of view too, is, we're gonna monitor this, but are we really gonna monitor this? So those are all the three items that I'm looking at when I'm trying to write up a recommendation, so.
I can't articulate it very well, but all kinds of bells and whistles are going on inside of me. We've never done this before, that's one thing. And I'm just concerned that it's an awful lot to have to digest and incorporate into what would be a staff recommendation. You know, when you've heard the litany of comments we heard the other night, you know, if you had a recommendation that would contrary to what everybody was saying, it just seems like it's premature to do that at that point in the process. It'd be great for the public, so to speak, to get the sense that, they've come in and influenced you by what they've said. And I said I can't articulate it the other, but there'd be second and third, implications that I want to think about, like if there was a disagreement between what you recommended and the board said, would that have to go to town council? I mean, there's some other parts of this thing that talk about that.
So let me make this really clear, Michael, and I appreciate your comments on this. I have no expectation that you will ever take my staff recommendation 100%. And I'm not offended if you think I'm nuts either. I won't say nuts. If you think I have come down wrong on an interpretation or course of action, I do not feel that way at all. And no staff member should ever feel that way. So beholden, like, how dare you go against my recommendation? I've given you my analysis. I am not saying that I am perfect, nor do I ensure that I have considered and weighed everything. I try my best, but there are things that come up both in your own experience as planning commissioners, that your consideration and evaluation of every application that comes in is highly valuable. And part of your job is to think of some of the greater community concerns. My job as staff is I'm looking at it from your policy documents. That's it. That's my job, is to see, is there a path forward? If I think your policy documents are saying, no, you can't have this, if they've clearly said, we never want this sort of thing happening in our community, and you guys are coming with a recommendation, oh yeah, we want that. And I'm gonna say, okay, we need to put a pause. If this is what you really want, we need to be amending your policy documents to make that happen. So I just want you to know, it will never hurt my feelings. It will never impact our relationship of how I staff this board. Nor is it a decision of the council choosing between my staff recommendation and your recommendation. Your recommendation is the most important thing going to the town council, because that's what they're looking for, is your input, not necessarily my input. I'm just
We'll be
staff.
coming back to that later. I'd be getting ahead of myself if I said anything more at this point, but I appreciate you saying that. And
Yeah. So I don't think hearing the staff recommendation is wrong, but I'm happy to temper how I'm doing your staff reports as we move forward, till we get a little more comfortable with how we each work and process things. So I think it's pretty clear, I can say on maybe any zoning text amendments moving forward, I don't do a staff recommendation at this point in time, we go through the public hearing process. But on the conditional use permits, I would provide you a staff recommendation.
And I keep thinking back to the grand participation we had from town a month ago, where I want to err on the side of making sure the audience understands the context of what the discussion is. And I don't really have an issue with, in that particular case, having a staff recommendation in the document ahead of time to try and rein in these side conversations. One man's opinion.
Right.
Go ahead, Katie.
Are we good so
Mhm.
far through
Yep.
9.3.7?
Yep.
And the only comment I'm gonna, if I can, I'm gonna leave that in here, and all I would then say is staff has no recommendation at this point, if that's where we are, okay? So then moving down to 9.3.8, then if you at this point now feel you've gotten all the information you need in terms of from the staff, from the applicant, from hearing from the public, everybody got their chance to talk, we would then close the hearing. So, and I want to stop and pause on this for a second. So one of the things that we didn't really focus on yet is, what if you feel you heard things that you really don't know the answers to, and you need more time, more information? A study needs to be obtained, or you need to hear from the Public Works Department or Utilities Department, or the harbor master on something, or you want to go talk to the Harbor Review Board, or you want to talk to the engineer that the town may have, or you guys need further analysis, or you require the applicant, boy, we really need a species review to make sure that this is not gonna impact some dead and dying
Yeah.
critter.
Wouldn't it be better for you if it said, Katie, it wouldn't be better if it said staff comments are presented rather than a recommendation? Recommendation is a pretty strong word to use there.
Well, again, as I said, if we can keep it that way, and if I have a recommendation to give, I will provide it. If I don't, that's what I will say, is I have
If
no
appropriate, then
recommendation.
it's presented if appropriate, then you
Right.
don't have to present a recommendation.
Right, it's not required, I will
Okay.
just, I will state
Fine.
where I
Okay.
am
That's fine.
in my analysis. at that
Okay.
point. So I did want to put that out here at 9.3.8, when I say does not require additional information, you do have that ability to pause. And I wanted to make that really clear, because I know it may not have felt that way the other night, that you could have taken a pause. You can always do that. And yes, we do run a calendar that we're trying to move it through the public hearing process in a judicious manner, in a timely manner, in both through the planning commission and to the town council. But there are also certain calendar issues legally. And I have made this switch on the Board of Zoning Appeals for staff reports. There's now a mandatory calendar section on there where I'm stating when we got the application in, the date it was received, and what is the clock ticking, and when must we take action on something. That is going to be added now to your staff reports for things that have the ticking clock that happens on conditional use permits, rezonings, text amendments, comprehensive plans. They also have a clock ticking when we start through the public hearing process. So we're gonna keep that front and center on all the staff reports, and it will be, you're gonna see a heading section that's gonna show it right up there, so we never forget. Cause you're gonna be surprised on some of your, like if you have a conditional rezoning, process that comes through, that clock goes a lot faster than you could ever imagine. And you think 100 days is a long time. It really isn't that long of a time. We've got a complex project walking through, say through a drive-through restaurant. That takes a long time to get those sorts of things considered perfectly. So that's one of the things that we're gonna make the change on. So I just wanted to ensure that this section is really meant for you to think not just about, did you hear from them, did you hear from the public, but once you heard all that, do you feel each and every member, talk it out, is there additional studies, documents, or information you feel really wasn't provided from the staff or the applicant that you need in order to make a recommendation. And that would be the time to articulate it.
Is that before the public hearing
I
is
have
closed?
my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, and it can be done in either way, and there's case law on this, and when we go through training, when I go through my own training to get certified in this field, there is case law that I've heard about and has been ruled upon. Nothing prevents this body, or even town council, from seeking additional information just because you've closed the public hearing. If you feel a need for it, you can seek it. So I just want to make you aware, and Supreme Court has ruled on this issue a few times. So you have the right, so you can take that action, say, we're closing the public hearing.
Okay.
And what that really means is you're closing it to the applicant, submitting additional things, from the comments still coming in and submitting additional things. Nothing stops you, under the law, to say, but we as the planning commission or town council, we feel a need that the applicant provide us additional information, and we are asking for it and wanting it, and will not make a decision until we receive it.
So
Or in the
that's key to
failure,
what you
or in the
just said.
failure, sorry,
I'm
or in the failure to provide it based upon whatever time frame is allotted for that, you then can take action. So, and I say that because you may say, well, we need a traffic study. I'm gonna throw something out. We need to really understand the impact this will do to our roads. Traffic studies aren't done in 2 weeks.
Right.
That's a consultant, oh Lord. You're lucky if you can get it done in 3 months. So that's why I say, sometimes you may have to bandy within a committed time frame to receive the report, and if it doesn't come in time, you may then still move forward and act and take your decisions accordingly, that's all. So go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for 9.3.8, the key thing I heard was the applicant is part of the public, because in our minds, we think of the applicant as separated, and so
And-
only if we wanted to, go talk to Joe down on the next block or something, and bring him in here. Okay.
This is a key component for you, because at 9.3.8, when you decide the public hearing is closed, the conversation stops from the rest of the room, and the whole conversation at that point is here, and only here. And it's up to you as a board to have your deliberations, have your conversations. You could start it by, and again, this is something we need to work on, what you're most comfortable. You could start by asking someone to put a motion on the floor to begin with, to start the conversation. I'm not saying it's the motion that's gonna
Right.
triumph at the end of the conversation, but at least it puts us at a starting talking point.
It's an icebreaker.
Or it could be, maybe the chairman wants to make sure each one gets a chance to be heard one more time. Where are you feeling? What are you thinking about right now? And then after you go through the whole board, then you say, okay, let's hear a motion then. Now that everybody's had a chance to gain the pulse of each member. So that's what I mean, that's the distinction here at 9.39.
Yeah, okay.
This is then your meeting and only your meeting. The only thing that can change here is if you need assistance in drafting any motions. I am always prepared, and that is part of the staff obligation, is to assist you in drafting the motions to represent what you're trying to do,
Okay.
okay? And the only tweak I would give you is if we need to reference, whatever context happened to support. I don't want anybody to go off on some, say we just did a conditional use permit and they're only looking for a bed and breakfast, but you approved them, oh, you can have a gas station too. Well, wait a minute, that was not there's no context for that to be part of your vote, and I would stop you from that. So that is where staff would come in to ensure that your motion is legal and foundational, okay? But 9.3.9 is only you talking, no one else.
I need to go back to 9.3.8 for just a second.
Yes.
If one of us decides that we need more information and we need to get it from utilities or whoever, what is the proper way to state that? I make a motion that, or?
Yes, and I guess part of this is you put out your desire, that you feel you don't have enough information as one commissioner to move forward with a decision. Is there support from others on the board? And then, yes, I would put it in a motion form saying, I would motion that we request this information for by the next meeting.
Okay.
In 2 months' time. There has to be some context and a
Yeah.
calendar associated with everything, or to direct staff. We need new maps to see how this really impacts us. It's gotta be very specific, not just, boy, we need more time.
Yeah, but
And I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this without sounding terrible, but, oh well, I don't think there's a way.
but-
You can't just give more time just because it's uncomfortable. That's really not where you should be delaying things.
Right.
Your delay should be because you really need specific information to help you reach a decision, not just, wow, I got a whole room full of angry people, let's give it another 30 days, maybe they won't show up when we make our decision.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Or
One
we
thing's
or we
very
throw it up to
clear,
council.
The additional information, Katie, the additional information has to come from the applicant and only the applicant. You can't ask a member of the public to elaborate on one of his comments.
No, you should have had that opportunity. If you think, if you've heard a comment from the public at large, that holds some relevancy for you, and you find, boy, that's really interesting, we don't know enough about that aspect. Say, tree cutting, or tree preservation or something. You're not necessarily asking the person in the audience, you're asking your staff to ensure that we get the information you
Okay.
need to do that.
Okay.
And the only reason I'm giving a distinction of that, some of this information may need to come from the applicant themselves. Like if
Right.
we need traffic studies, if we need additional engineering, or we need to see a full-scale set of building plans, or we need to see
Yeah.
a revised site plan, I can't do that. The applicant is gonna be requested to do that.
Right.
He can't be ordered to do it, he can be requested, and if he doesn't perform in the time frame you allotted him to produce that additional information, then you will act accordingly.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
If that was so important and you feel you can't, then that may influence what your vote is going to be. So,
I have a question on the very first sentence, the procedures normally follow.
what page are we on?
Where are we?
9.3, or 9-3,
The overarching statement at the
Oh.
end, 9.3.
which makes it sound like there are times when we won't normally follow this.
Oh,
Well, since this is brand new, part of me was hedging my bets. If there is some discomfort in this process, and I don't want to be so rigid that you can't have flexibility when an application comes forward that might need some deviation from this process.
You got the
That's
word
all.
shall on there, though.
You should also could change it
So-
to typically
It says
too.
shall be, that means it's in law.
that's
It's
right.
a case, there
Right.
could be, should be,
Maybe.
shall be.
And this is me, giving you my experience, and I recognize this is a real deviation from the way you have handled public hearings in the past. And it's a twofold, it's not just a deviation from public hearings, it's also deviation from public comment coming into your commission
Oh, yeah.
as well. So I'm really asking you to change two processes that I think have been tradition here for some time. And that's a real bite I'm asking you to take.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, because we're all looking to make this better, basically, is where we're heading, so, yeah, yep,
And it's just a rearrangement, you're not throwing out anything.
no.
No, I am just rearranging, and I think once we actually do this a few times, I think you will actually see the benefit to it. And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it will help streamline our meeting flow, and,
Okay.
and I'm not gonna say it's gonna improve your public, relationships to the citizenry at large, but I think it's going to make a tremendous difference. Right, I really do. And I've run many communities and done this, and I've led a lot of really controversial matters.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar, I led the county through 3 whole revisions of their zoning ordinance. Not just little bits, the whole document. I did that 3 times in my tenure with Northampton County. And this is the exact same process we held in all 3 of those processes. So,
I personally think the public will like this.
It'll also be a challenge to the public to listen Because if they come up and read something they prepared in advance that doesn't reflect of any listening, it's not gonna help their cause.
Right. And that happens, and people, they may have written statements, and they may not edit them just because of what presentation was made. That's okay too.
Maybe too nervous and then all that kind of
Right.
thing too.
Right, but I do feel an obligation to try and get the case out there and trying to ensure everybody has the same information so that we're all debating the same matter. I think that was part of the challenge the other night, is there was a lot of misperception as to what was being proposed and what was really under consideration. There were a lot of conversations and elements going on. I'm not saying that they weren't relevant nor important. They just may not have been central to what was up for public hearing at that particular night, that's all. So,
Yeah.
so that walks you through the process of a public hearing. And again, keep in mind, and I think we're correct in saying this would apply to, again, going through the list, your conditional use permits, maps, text, comprehensive plan amendments. Have I missed anything else you guys do? I think those are your key responsibilities that you're charged with doing at this point in time. So. Where do you want to go from here? Can we start back at the beginning?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Are we? We're not going to go to 10?
10
Yeah,
pages.
we could do 10.
And then there's a couple of appendices, rules of conduct and ethics.
Right. So on 10, we're just cleaning up a few things, and this relates to correspondence and application information. So putting the authority with your staff to draft and sign all correspondence necessary for the execution of the duties and functions of the planning commission. What that translates to, just so you understand that, out of all of your meetings, I notify the applicant what happened. And so I'm asking for that authority that I'm communicating whatever you did here at these meetings. And that's what I'm doing for you. I'm not asking to get the chairman in when I can get him in to sign the letter that needs to go out the door, or the memo, or the whatever it's going to be. So I'm happy to share what that correspondence is, so you see it and you know that I'm representing you correctly. That's absolutely part of it, all of our public records. But we're just trying to clean up that responsibility.
Should, in 10.1, should it be duties and functions?
Oh, sure. Thank you for the catch.
I want to go back, since we are talking about this, but I need to go back to 4.
But you're the one who told us to do that.
I know, but the reason I am is, this is 4.1, the reason I am is, this says the secretary shall, and this says the definition of secretary is a zoning administrator, planning director, or comparable town position, or their designee. That's pretty wide.
Well, then, can we finish up 10, and I will come back to 4 and explain that. And I say that because there's, I think there's a recognition that we are still figuring out what should be the staffing and the number of employees serving within this department, and I'm happy to expound upon that when we get there. And then if you
Sure.
feel that still needs to be revised, we can come back and make that notation here.
Okay.
Okay? 10.2 just talks about that we have the ability to communicate with you by telephone or other means when necessary to ensure that we are informing you as quickly as possible. So that it's not always by letter that we notify you, that we're gonna try and keep you guys informed and abreast as quickly as possible. The only thing I didn't stress in here is our communication would be through your town email, but we're gonna talk about town email accounts later on this evening as well, so, okay?
Could it be that we still do send something by letter? It's one thing to notify someone ahead of time by phone, but I think still sending the letter anyway
Yes.
is a good idea.
And for example, like, there are things we're still required that if we're going to reschedule a meeting, so we had a weather event, and we need to move you from December 12th to December 19th because of weather. I'm still required to do a written letter to each of you that we have move the
Okay.
meeting because of weather conditions.
Do you have,
I'm still gonna put it to
do
you
you
by
have our cell
email.
numbers?
Say that again?
Do you have all of our cell numbers?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
good.
But yeah, there are still things under the code, I still have to send them out in writing.
No, no,
to
that's
you,
fine,
too.
that's fine,
Yes,
that's fine.
Yes. But part of this is trying to make you aware, we're gonna communicate in the best fashion possible to make sure everybody stays on the same page at the
That's
same
fine.
time,
Mhm,
okay?
mhm.
Okay, so this is a big one. And part of what, again, I've been doing this with the Board of Zoning Appeals, and we're now trying to get better at doing this for your reports, is having a declaration when an application is complete. Because just getting an application in is not what starts the clock ticking. A completed application is what gets the clock ticking. And in some instances for this body, it's when that completed application is first presented to you at your first meeting, the first available meeting. So it's as soon as I can tell you, I've gotten in a conditional use permit, I've gotten in an application, and I need to schedule it for public hearing, that starts your clock ticking. So it really is important that your staff is fully versed in what is needed in an application and ensures that all of that information is supplied up front in order for us to deem it complete. So that's ensuring we've got site plans, that we've got any questions related to the utility connections that might be part of the consideration, that we've got their whole parking concepts laid out, we've got their hours of operation information contained to us, that all the transportation issues, whether they be with VDOT or with the town, and how those are gonna be handled or proposed for remedy. That's part of what I would consider a complete application. And one of the things I'm gonna hit, and I know you guys haven't, may not have had this experience, but I'm not surprised if you don't have it in the near future. And I'm gonna come back to a really large-scale restaurant with drive-through. That's a whole different ballgame for you. And I think that may happen to this town in your lifetime. That's a whole transportation analysis that goes through. And if that's not submitted at the time of the application, then the application is not complete and does not proceed forward. Because that takes significant amount of time to get through VDOT. And VDOT has a whole calendar that they observe on those things too. That runs 90 days for VDOT alone. So those are things that I'm working on another internal procedures manual so that we know the VDOT procedures and how they intertwine and where we need to notify. Subdivisions are another piece for VDOT. And traffic and how things flow into the VDOT controlled roads, those all require traffic studies. And there's, again, easily a 90 to 120 day process with VDOT on those things. So a completed application is a real important designation. And part of that is on our paperwork, on our applications, we need to get really clear on what documents we're requiring. And if they're not in, it's not deemed a completed application. And that's both on commercial and on residential applications that come forward. So it's an important piece here. So that's why we wanted to state it the way I've stated it in here. And we need to get all this information in sufficient time to allow you the time you're gonna need to read it, study it, go out, talk about it, think about it, and figure out, what else am I lacking that I need from the staff to get more information on?
I want to make sure I understand. So when an application is completed and you come to the planning commission and say, I want to schedule a hearing, that's when the days start? So
As soon as.
from the planning commission?
From the
Okay.
date I bring it to the planning commission, say, we have a completed application in, I'm asking for authorization to move this to public hearing, that starts the clock ticking.
Well,
Okay.
is that correct? Because I thought in some cases, maybe it's historic, you get a completed application and there's a time frame as to when you get it to the meeting.
For historic, it is, as I said,
Okay,
this is
so
just
it's
for
different.
planning
Just-
commission.
Okay.
And that's, each one of these is tailored for the
Right.
body in which we're writing the manual for, because they're all different calendars that run at
Right,
different
okay.
times.
Well, again, you said, give us time.
Mhm.
And right now, I've been on been notified prior to, you know, a packet, okay? So, which comes out on Thursday before the meeting. So if you think that that window, which covers a weekend, is sufficient, then you know, that may not be true in certain cases. So where, if you have something like that, then you need to notify the commission prior to that.
Sure,
So we can make due diligence.
sure.
Is there any requirement that you get it to us by a certain time?
Not under the Code of Virginia.
Right.
So part of this is, as I said, we are working through our forms updates in the office. We're looking at application documents that we have now and internally and seeing how we can make improvements on those. We do get a lot of applications that come through our door, and I'm not talking the text amendments. That's a whole different ballgame. Text and map amendments are a different animal. I'm gonna hit your conditional use permits. So somebody wants to convert the second floor space on Mason for living quarters. You'd think that's a relatively easy application. We need a site plan, we need some schematics, we need your application, we need to make sure you're the owner of the property. You'd be surprised how often we don't get those 4 things. It's amazing, and I don't think it's a complicated application request or process to walk through, but there has been, in my senses, most people, those are just, you know, formalities. We don't really need to give you all of that. Yeah, you really do need to give us all of that. So for example, I know we're gonna have a true conditional use permit coming back to you on something that you have already approved for a conditional use permit. And I think one of those is coming in with, while you approved the second floor, the primary commercial space, I think, will be coming back in your direction for additional permitting requirements. And we have now been working with that applicant as to those elements, and they're like, so you're really gonna need that in advance? I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna need all of those things in advance. I need to see any agreements that you have to provide certain elements of your function. I need the full site plan that shows how this property is being used and how certain things are gonna be provided. How's deliveries gonna happen? How's, you know, trash pickup going to happen? I really need to know that in advance of the application going to you, because you guys are all gonna ask those very same questions. Your neighbors are gonna ask those same questions. The adjacent property owners to wherever this is are gonna ask those very same questions. So that is part of we're trying to refine the application process to explain what should be in a narrative, what should be part of their, I need to know their number of employees, I need to know hours of operation, I need to know, will there be music? Is there gonna be any outdoor music? Is there gonna be, it's all inside? Is there gonna be bands, or is it just gonna be, you know, a sound system? Is, again, how the deliveries are being made, the consideration of when those hours of deliveries would be, where the trash cans are going to be, and are we sure that you can get all that service done accordingly, and how does that look on the property? Even the propane delivery, and we're checking on that now, and we're trying to ensure we know if there's an alley back there, what are the legal rights to that alley, and who's got the right to use it, and to make sure. Those are all the elements that need to be part of a submission plan. I can't say it's always been clear in the past, and that hasn't always been presented as part of an application coming in the door. And I'm not sure you've always seen that either. So, as I said, I'm not talking text amendments and map amendments, those are bigger animals, and we can talk about the difference between the two processes and the information that should be required on both. But conditional use permits are usually your kind of bread and butter of what you're doing here day in, day out, month to month. So they do take up more of our time to ensure that we give you the most comprehensive package we can put forward for you.
So speaking to what Bill said, so it's complete application when you bring it to us and say, could you put this on public hearing? So we should, at that point, have a copy of their complete application. So that would give us,
And it gives you a chance.
Yeah, a month.
It gives you a month, and when I say that, it also it's a good chance for you to push back on, well, Katie, you've called this incomplete, we don't think it's complete. And that's a good
okay.
time for us to have that conversation. I will not, and I've talked to Bill about this, candidly, staff-wise and how we're handling things at the moment. I will not have my comprehensive staff analysis done when I'm presenting it to you to request to go to public hearing. I am gonna give you every piece of paper we have received from the applicant that we have considered this application complete. It doesn't mean I'm recommending it. I'm just asking you to start the clock. That's all I'm doing. And you're still gonna get a staff report from me that may have additional elements for your consideration in terms of our analysis of how this flies into the comprehensive plan and any other planning documents you have out there, or conditions I would recommend after reviewing everything that they gave us, or concerns I have, or if you feel it's really not complete. And I do lean upon you, because some of you have a far greater knowledge than I do of the intricacies of this town and its operations and documents and history. Speak up when you're getting that packet from me for the first time, and I'm thinking, okay, I think I've got everything I need for you guys to schedule this public hearing. I'm calling this complete. You can push back and say, we don't think it's complete. We're missing, we think this is missing. We think did you know there's a trust agreement on this I don't know. I don't know what it is, but you might have that knowledge that I'm just not privy to. I am trying to do, I won't say I'm doing a full title search. I'm trying to do at least the 2 prior owners to make sure, yes, this property has been transferred and this is the clear owner and this is who's sitting at the table and should be sitting at the table. I'm trying to see if there were any recorded easements within the last 2 property owners. I'm not going back further than that. I can tell you that's an issue that's come up repeatedly in my tenure here, is easement knowledge and alleys and easements associated with alleys. So it is part of the notations I want is changes in your zoning ordinance. That's a whole conversation for another day. But I don't think we're doing ourselves a service by allowing site plans to come in that aren't accompanied with a full title report. Because I think that has burned us a few times now from the staff perspective in moving things through the system. But that's, as I said, that's not part of your manual. That's a whole nother document to propose revisions to.
I can see where it would be a problem for you to provide your full examination of everything for the first couple of months, but would it not, after that, be, you're just doing it a month and a half in advance instead of a week in advance? I mean, when you're caught up, then you're on a timeline?
I'm never coming.
I know, but as caught up as you ever are.
And I think Tracy and I are hearing it loud and clear, and right now, it's not from Tracy's lack of perseverance, it really is coming from me, why you're getting your agenda packets a day late or 2 days late. It's because I am still doing the work to get it out the door in the most comprehensive package. So I am trying to work as fast as I can to get us back so that you're receiving the agenda packets a full 1 week in advance. I hope to make that a priority come this fall, that we institute it and memorialize that as procedure in our office. 1 week in advance, all agenda packets are delivered. That doesn't necessarily give Bill the time, but again, I think has been noted, you've actually had a month and a week of receiving the agenda packet. So yes, that first notification, you really should be starting to do your work on that. And talking to me, and that should be part of this conversation is, did I think of this? Or have you thought about that? Or what do you think of this, Katie? Or where are you coming on this issue? That is absolutely appropriate to be talking to me during the whole month, as I'm actually crafting the staff report and my recommendation to you as we head into public hearing. Again, to go through the process, you're going to start to hear from the moment you give me a go, that public hearing notice will basically come out almost 10 days later in the paper. So it goes out, and on some of these, we also are required to do letters out to adjacent property owners.
Right.
So that's, I'll be honest, I think it's those letters that trigger the first wave of public comments to you and into our office, is people receiving those letters and then talking to their neighbors, what's this about? So we're just making you aware that's when you're gonna start to hear from the public too. They not necessarily fall on your meetings every time. It's on, usually it's that first round of letters that go out the door, so. Okay, are we okay so far?
Mhm. Can I make a recommendation, and are we finished this discussion for now? Because we've got other stuff on the agenda. Can I make a recommendation that we pick up at section 7 next time? Because the issue I have is in 7.6.
Sure, and if the only, if I could go back, if Dennis and the rest, are you okay? If I can just touch base with Diane's concern that she expressed about.
Sure, go
the
ahead.
term secretary.
Yeah,
and-
yeah, yeah.
and what that means, and I think
Yep.
you referenced it under Article 4.
4, yep.
Let me get
4.1,
this-
4-1.
4-1.
There's a lot
So
of them.
let's just talk about process and procedure and why we even mentioned the secretary in here. Because some boards, it could be a member of the planning commission serves as your secretary. I think traditionally, you've had a member of your staff serve in that capacity.
Right.
The staff, until the last 2 years, I believe, has really only been one person for this department.
Right.
We recognize there's a need for increased staffing in this department, and we are working with town council to ensure that happens within our budgetary capacity. So at this point, there is funding for I'm not exactly sure of all the titles, so forgive me if I'm a little loose on this. Whether it's called a planning director or planning zoning administrator, we're looking for an additional staff person to come in, and we are still trying to flesh that out, what that structure should look like, if that's gonna be a planning person or a zoning person, we don't know yet. And then definitely a technical, administrative person such as Tracy. Is that me? That's you, okay, sorry. So, and I say that because sometimes I may be the one in attendance, but I'm just being candid. You all know that I'm an interim in
Right.
this position. I'm making no guarantees I'm coming on in any long-term capacity with the town, but nor have I shot that down, that conversation yet. There's still a lot of flux and fluidity going on in my personal life that prevents me from making a full commitment today. And I say that because I don't want to feel that just because I may be absent from a particular meeting because of personal circumstances in my life, that Tracy couldn't step forward and step in and do some of this on my behalf. So that's why I said the designee, and I just wanted to make that really clear what I meant by that, or comparable town position or their designee. If the whole planning department quits, then Mr. Hosey is responsible for the planning department to be functional. I'm just being realistic about it. That's his job. He holds all the shoulder pressure that we can put on him. He's got to carry the ball. That's his job. So that's why I put in that flexibility, because it happens, and you have been here and you've experienced that, where you've had positions leave, and what would have happened to you. So we need to ensure there's flexibility in this document, that somebody can stand in and do the work that has to continue to carry forward, because there are very pressing legal requirements you must be meeting all the time. And in your absence of being able to meet those legal requirements, it's not like the things just die. They actually, in some of these, they move forward to the town council without a recommendation from this body, and they are deemed to be a favorable recommendation
Right.
in the absence of any recommendation from you. So those are very serious consequences.
Yep.
And so we don't want to leave you hanging just because of some staffing challenges. So we want to put some flexibility in your procedural documents. That's all.
I don't like the words comparable town position.
What would you prefer?
Just strike them. It could be zoning administrator, planning director, or somebody
And-
within the planning
And
department.
I'm saying that because I don't think we quite know what will be the final titles or what we're gonna call these positions. Is it gonna be a zoning administrator? Is it gonna be a zoning technician? Is it gonna be planning director or planning administrator? We don't have that organizational structure.
What department does John Hosey?
John is the town manager.
Okay, so it could be a member of the town manager's
Right.
staff.
Right, so we are really meaning the staff associated with the Department of Planning and Zoning. I just don't know what all those position titles will
I
be.
But that doesn't, that's not what it says.
So,
That's what bothers me. If you were to say it was anybody related to the planning and zoning department, I would be fine with that.
Okay.
But comparable town position could be anybody, public utilities on the same level as you.
Not really.
Well, I mean, why not?
So if that makes you uncomfortable, we can strike that. If that's where the board feels, we can strike that.
Makes, yes.
If I can think of different language, I will try
Yeah.
in the next
Okay.
month or so. Okay?
I guess if we look at it as, you could designate John Hosey, or, you know, anybody else.
Well, and I say that because Mr. Hosey appoints me.
Right,
So he's the boss.
right.
And so if there are vacancies, it's up to him to figure out how departments are going to function
Right.
in the interim, which is how you got me,
Mhm.
candidly.
All right, but that, we've got to be clear that secretary is very different from zoning administrator.
Right, and this is part of, there's certain functionalities that still need to happen, like the minutes need to be done, and the position of the secretary is to ensure
Yeah.
your minutes get done.
Right,
And yes, I have designated Ms. Outen over here to actually generate the minutes for us. But yes, it's my job as your secretary to ensure the minutes are getting done. So there are very functional things that the secretary is doing in this position, and it just happens to be the function of the zoning administrator, planning director, or comparable town position to do that. So I don't know, again, I don't know what the staffing titles are going to be in
Right.
this department at this point in
Understood.
time.
you got your needs met, Diane?
Mm-hmm.
Can we move on to
Okay.
considering restarting at Chapter 7 next time?
Okay. So we'll put all the rest of this on hold until our next meeting,
That's fine.
okay?
Thank you
Um,
very much.
Before we go fully off of this, because I am committed and required by town council action to bring you to Appendix A and Appendix B
Oh,
before we fully move off,
okay.
which are, at their meeting last Thursday, they adopted two new policies. And Appendix A is now policy through the town as a whole, the guidelines for citizen participation.
Mhm.
So this is really just for your information at this point in time. It can't be amended by you. It is adopted by the town council, and this is now in effect for all boards, commissions, committees, et cetera, et cetera.
Isn't there a little blurb somewhere at the end of this that says that it applies to everybody? One of these has that.
Applicability, on page 3 of 3, this is on the town guidelines for citizen participation. Applicability at the
Yeah,
very end
that-
of it.
Full sentence.
While these guidelines reference to the town
Yes.
council specifically, they shall also apply to all town boards, commissions, and committees as appropriate. That's why I wanted to ensure you were provided a copy of this and know that this is the rules moving forward. And this is important, because part of, and Mr. Hosey has explained this, I've talked about this as well, you know, some of the conduct that did occur at a recent meeting is really inappropriate. Applauding. And I say that, I get people wish to make their support of particular comments known. It's not appropriate, because your venue is time limited, it's specific and focused, and we don't have the time to spare for that sort of demonstration. And so I think this is really clear, and this will be provided and enforced as we hold our public hearings and as you conduct your meetings as a whole, both in terms of how people speak. I think the one clear thing, and this will give us the authority to come in, it limits their time, and it also states that they need to give us who they are and their ability to speak at a meeting, their standing, an address. I know that was asked the other night. I think it was asked the other night at one of our meetings, what's the significance of this? And asking for someone's address lets us know, are they a resident of the town, or are they affiliated with some board or commission or agency that is affiliated with the town or serves the town in some capacity? There needs to be standing. Hearing just from somebody who happens to live on Chincoteague Island may not be really what's appropriate, for example. I'm not picking on Chincoteague, I love them, but anyway.
I have a question up above under decorum and order, where it says there shall be a sergeant at arms and it looks like police. If this applies to all boards and commissions, should we not have that person in attendance at our meetings?
I think it comes down to subject.
Right.
You
And,
know,
and we've put in a couple of requests from a staff perspective intended for you as well. We can, I won't call you staff, but we consider you just as important as us too. And about your safety. So that is one of the things that we've been talking about and ensuring that the police department is aware of meeting schedules and that becomes part of whoever shift is working that evening, that they're coming by and checking on us throughout the time we're gonna be in this building. We're also notifying them if we think there might be a more contentious meeting than normal. Because, again, we knew this might be not as well attended tonight.
Right.
But there are others that we think might gain some interest, so we also are making sure we're reaching out to the police department to make them aware, we wouldn't mind you guys coming by.
Right.
There are times that we will reach out to them and say, we need you.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So it depends upon
Because
what is on
he
the
needs to have
agenda.
the backup should somebody be ill-behaved and ask the sergeant-at-arms to remove the individual, so,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, other than a police officer, who would be a sergeant-at-arms?
A police officer.
Police officer.
It says one or more persons, including town police officers.
Again, I'm not volunteering for the role, but again, in prior places I've worked, sometimes I did that in my capacity. Sometimes we asked a more impressively endowed official to step forward.
Could have a security officer.
It's a big mofo.
Yeah.
And occasionally when, and I'm not saying that this is, I can just make you aware of my experience. Occasionally when we could not get a member of the public to conduct themselves accordingly, and until we can gain control of the room, we actually paused the entire meeting. We said, okay, we're taking a break, a 15-minute break until we can get the police here to deal with this situation. That's a way to handle this if we don't have a police officer here, is we stop the process and we say, okay, we're not gonna take any more comment, we're shutting down the meeting, you guys are all walking away and we're getting the police over here to deal with this. There are ways to handle this.
Just curious, was it felt that the meetings were out of control?
Somewhat.
Yes, somewhat. I think this last round, it was a little more rambunctious than has been the experience with the town. And I think we want to ensure that we've got a process in place and we're not just reacting. We're trying to be proactive, that we have a consistent policy across all boards, commissions, everybody who comes together in some public forum. We want to make sure we're conducting ourselves the same across all venues.
And I think, Libby, this policy has been in existence, right?
Yeah, John Posey made a few changes to it, but it's been in existence since 2012.
Yeah, so it's not as though this is brand newly created, it's like, okay, dust it off and,
And
You got-
part of this is we're trying to make sure it really gets out to every
Right.
board and it really incorporate it into your policies and
Yep.
procedures.
Right.
Yes.
So we would say that it applies to the citizens in the audience, the applicant, the members of the board. It applies to everybody.
Everybody.
Okay.
Like, there should be no swearing at a public meeting. There just should not be any swearing at a public meeting. Just saying. Okay, so that's Appendix A, Appendix,
Are you gonna get legal to review this?
it is adopted by town council already. I don't know if they had legal review it in advance of that. This is adopted by town
Libby has
council
an
already.
answer.
The original one was drafted by legal. The one that was adopted back in 12 or 13.
Okay.
So the basis for this was legal.
So then I'm gonna hit on Appendix B. This also was adopted by town council at last Thursday's meeting. And part of this is they are looking for each board member to receive it, and we do have a signature page that we're gonna be providing to each of you. I think it was in your packets this evening. We're gonna talk about that here in a second. So it's a two-part, so there's a code of ethics, and we are gonna be talking a little bit further about ethics in tonight's meeting. And I think you've all had a chance to read through that. And then there is a whole section on meeting rules of order. Everything from the types of meeting that can be convened, down to town hall meetings even. And then as I flip the page, motions, subsidiary motions, for you to enact your business, and agendas. So we're trying to provide some basic structure to all boards, committees, everybody that has this sort of format, that is doing a traditional meeting. We're trying to give them some language to operate within. So with that said, it should be in the front of your binder packet. There should be a signature page for each of you that we're gonna ask before you leave here this evening. You sign that and provide that to Tracy. And if you'd like a copy of your signature page, we can scan that in and get that back to you, but otherwise, the originals are going to be provided to the town manager's office on file. And this will be done annually, or as we get new board members coming in, they're gonna have to receive and acknowledge that they've gotten this policy and sign for it.
But it does say, under meeting types on page 4, it says this document is not to be considered a substitute for FOIA training.
That's correct.
So we're getting FOIA training tonight.
I'm going to give you an overview of FOIA training. I am not the FOIA officer for the town. Libby serves in that capacity, and that will be up to her to schedule, and I don't know what the process has been. I didn't have a chance to consult with her, but I felt while we were doing some of this procedural work this evening, I'd go ahead and give you an overview of some of the other policies, state law that governs us.
Just on one point, item number 13, that doesn't pertain to the situation here where a member of the town council is a member of the
13.
planning commission, right? That's on page 3 of it.
No, it doesn't. Again, that is set by statute, by the Code of Virginia, that a member of the town council can serve as a member of the planning commission. So that is regulated by state
And in that role, he
code.
can exert as much influence as he wants, right? Okay.
Well, one vote.
Or as little as
A
you
vote.
can.
And one vote.
Not one vote. One vote is one member.
That's right. Okay, so that's Appendix B.
Ah, okay, that's where that came from.
Oh, sorry, my question was appendix B, I was ahead of myself.
Okay.
I thought we covered that.
So are we good with A and B under item 7 of our new business, the appendices and a pause on our bylaws? If we're good, I'm gonna move on to the FOIA and Public Records Act. And I gave you a giant document, and I'm sorry for that, but I can now say at least you received a copy of the Freedom of Information Act and the Conflict of Interest Act and the relevant sections of the Public Records Act. Now I'm gonna give you just really the overview of what is important that we should be following here. Okay. Now, come on, thing, work for me. There we go.
This is not a Virginia law, this is a federal law.
Okay, so in Virginia, there is a Conflict of Interest Act. And it's no different than what is in the Code of Ethics that was provided and the Code of Conduct that was included in the appendices that we just looked at, that was adopted by the town council. And it's just uphold the laws, loyalty to the highest moral principles, adopt policies and programs that support the entire population, not just certain segments. So it's just asking you to do what you have been asked to do, of represent the entire town. You don't represent just the street you live on, you represent the whole community. Don't place your family or you in a position of being in conflict, of doing action that is going to be embarrassing, compromising, illegal, or immoral. Make no private promises that will bind you. Don't use info that you get through serving on this commission to benefit you in any way, shape, or form. Most importantly, in your position, you should be current with your taxes for the town. If you're going to be putting policies and approvals forward, make sure at least you're paying the bills for this community too. And always conduct your public business in compliance with FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act. So that just is a general synopsis of code of conduct, nothing new for you guys. As part of this, make sure you come to your meetings. Be courteous to everybody, including staff, citizens, and your colleagues. Try not to criticize your colleagues or your staff to whatever media might be present. And I use the term media to represent all the media types that are out there today. Have a strong relationship with your staff. We are trying our best to help serve and move this body forward, so view us in that way. Follow the chain of command, and the chain of command for this board is through your planning and zoning administrator, or if your conflict is with that individual, then it is to the town manager. As we've indicated, that is the supervisor in that chain of command. And then try and address that criticism of any colleagues or town employees in the appropriate format, either directly with that individual or through their supervisory capacities in that chain of command. So I'm really going to spend a bulk of the time on FOIA, and I think some of you have heard that term recently. If you didn't know what it means, it's the Freedom of Information Act, and you have the whole section from the the Code of Virginia. This really are the highlights of it. It's been around for a long time, since 1968. Basically, your meetings need to be open, public, known, posted, and minutes retained. That does not mean verbatim minutes. That means a synopsis or summary of the actions taken. It may mean that we record the consensus of what a conversation was. It may not be a word for word attribute of what a conversation was. There are minutes that you see, review, and adopt. When we post at the town hall on the bulletin board. We post on the website for our meetings. We also now include deadlines. We're trying to advertise and inform the public deadlines to get applications in for matters that need to come before you as well, so that people are aware of what it takes to get before you on a schedule of your meetings. If there are emergency meetings, there are procedures to how we can convene an emergency meeting, and availability of the whole packet that goes out to the public. Where can it be found? Because we have to make it publicly available to the public, not just to you as members. If there's informal polling going on amongst you on taking a position on a matter, that is also still public and part of the Freedom of Information Act. So you may think, well, I was just talking to so-and-so at the coffee house about this. Well, if you started to do some town business, it was just 2 of you, you can do that. If it's 3 of you, that's a meeting, and that's a problem. And we don't want you to do that. So if there are 3 of you gathering, you only better be talking about the party from last weekend and not about any business that has come before you. I mentioned that there's the ability of closed meetings or executive sessions that are sometimes known as. That is not something that you will do frequently, but it may occasionally happen in your world too. So we wanted to make you aware for that. And there are very, very, very specific reasons why you can go into a closed session. And on the next slide, I'm going to talk about what some of those might be for you. Before I move on,
The bottom line, though, with closed meeting, there's no voting.
That's correct, I'm coming to that. But before I move off, I want to hit subcommittees for a minute. So you may, from time to time, as a body of 7, decide you want to convene a subcommittee or appoint a subcommittee to study, I don't know, medical services in this community, and you need a subcommittee of 3 of you. That sets different quorum standards. So you're no longer a member of the planning commission when that subcommittee comes together. You're the medical services subcommittee. So if 2 of you show up, that's a quorum. And I make those distinctions because just because 3 of you now come together in that subcommittee, that doesn't now make it a planning commission meeting. It's still the subcommittee meeting. And there's a difference between those. And I don't know if you guys have ever done subcommittees here. I have in prior communities. It happens a lot. And we tend to peel off and let various groups come together under the planning commission to do certain tasks. It could be to work on the comprehensive plan. 3 of you get peeled off and you're working on the comprehensive plan, certain chapters, stuff of that nature. So even the subcommittees are still subject to all of the FOIA requirements, posting of the meetings, minutes of the meetings, public has to be informed and can attend any of those subcommittee meetings. So we still have to follow FOIA even if you're just a subcommittee of the Planning Commission. So come into closed session. If you should go into one, Mr. Grossman is absolutely correct. There is no voting inside a closed session. Typically, the only minutes are there of when the vote is to move into closed session and the vote to come out of closed session. We request and expect under the Code of Conduct that closed sessions are held as closed sessions, confidential and really not discussed. That does fall upon your conduct and your character if that will hold true. We get that there's a freedom of speech issue that may run contrary to this, but we are asking those, if you participate in a closed session, that it stay in closed session until the matter is resolved publicly. So with that said, moving over into the other elements of the Freedom of Information Act. And part of this is where the Public Records Act plays right into this. So I mention this because we talked about minutes. Minutes are, of course, public records, part of the documentation. Letters that come out, correspondence that gets issued, emails on any matter are public records. And this becomes really important, and I want to focus a little bit of time on this, if we can. I think all of you have been issued a county email address. I know you may not check it with great frequency. And I think we've gotten into not a terribly great habit of also ensuring that we're communicating with you on your personal email too. There's a danger in that because, and I included the entire quote here, and I know it may be hard to see, so I'm going to read it. Emails have generated much controversy since they began being used in a government business operations. Emails that deal with public business are public records. Emails kept on the home computer of a council member or local government employee that relate to the transaction of public business are public and subject to inspection and copying by a citizen who makes a request to see the records. Text messages have become the subject of many FOIA requests as well. These must be produced if requested and are subject to the records retention rules as well. So, the rule of thumb that I'm asking you to do to kind of help you, we really don't want to use your personal email address. We want to only communicate with you through your county, your town. I keep saying county, I should change that. That's me. Town-issued email address, not county, I apologize. And if you're going to then respond, whether it be from an applicant or a citizen sending you an email, ensure when you respond, CC the town staff, because we are your records retention officers. We are here trying to keep all the records for the department as a whole. So if you want to ensure that we get it, and so when a FOIA request comes, and I do say when, not if, when a FOIA request comes, you can lean upon your town staff to do our record search through our records, through our email accounts, through everything to see if we can handle the FOIA request ourselves. Or wait, that didn't come through your official county address or town address. You went through your personal. Well, we have to go back through your personal, and you're going to have to cough this up and respond to the FOIA on your own. And that could lead to allegations. You didn't cough everything up. So we're going to need to go in and look at your records. We're going to need to see your computer. And if you try and then destroy things, or if you delete things, if you just start in the habit to delete things out of your own personal accounts at home so often, that's a problem, especially if you deleted what should have been a town record. So this is really strong. I can't order you, but I'm trying to. Make sure if you're going to respond by email, always at a minimum, CC either the planner or the planning tech on your email so that we are keeping it as part of our records. Because I've now been here, as I said, almost 5 months, 6 months now, 5 months. My email account is huge because I don't ever delete an email. And they're all sorted and saved accordingly because they're public records. Just to make you aware of that. Any questions on that piece of it?
I'll ask a question that probably is specific to me. I live by getting rid of text as soon as I can, literally. Anytime a text comes in that doesn't require my immediate response, gets deleted right off the bat.
Sure.
No questions asked. So I would suggest that no town content come through text.
And so this is a good conversation to have here, Dennis, because, it may be, are you coming to the meeting or not?
And that's, I don't have,
That's
I don't have an
just like
issue
a
with
phone
that.
call, I have to be
Yeah, yeah.
candid, that's
That's
just
fine.
like a phone call.
Right.
But yes, if a text message comes in that's saying, well, what did you think of what they said at this meeting? That becomes a public record. That
Yeah.
is what I would call a public record.
Right,
And so, yes, if you respond by text, I'd probably ask you not to.
yeah, right.
I would advise you to err on the side of caution here, because those are supposed to be publicly saved documents at all times. So if you're going to respond to a text, you better make sure you've included my cell phone or Tracy's cell phone, so that we're retaining it as a public record.
Okay,
And the problem right now with doing that, and that's why I didn't include our information in this presentation, I don't have a town-issued cell phone, neither does Tracy. So I really don't want your text messages coming to me either.
okay. Good,
Being
good.
candid.
Yeah, yeah,
Because that becomes a problem, because I've got a lot of personal things that I really don't want the whole citizenry of Cape Charles to be privy to as to what's
Right.
going on in my life.
yeah, yeah, understood,
Just
understood.
putting it out front. And I wish I could say I delete all my texts. I don't, because I've got a lot of things going on that I need to keep referring back to.
Right,
So in that regard, if you are getting communication by text, I would ask you then, don't respond to them by text, respond by email,
yeah, yeah, okay.
okay?
Town email,
Right,
perfect, that's fine.
right, county email, okay? I'm gonna come off just a second, because the town has received 2 FOIAs that involve this department and this board. And I think some of you have responded to Libby, and the rest is to nudge you who have not had a chance to respond. Please do so, even if your answer is, I have no documents that are being requested. Put that in writing, send that email to Libby, so that we can provide that as part of the response to the FOIA.
So that was sent on the town one, not,
Yes.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
sent to CapeCharles.org twice, actually.
well, I don't like to say that I'm not very technologically adept, but I am not technologically adept.
Well, I'm the same way. I use this right before, so I guess now what you're saying is that we need to check our emails periodically
On this.
on this.
If at least once a week. If you guys could do it once a week,
Yeah,
make that either your first thing you're doing Monday morning or Friday morning or something, do that, and
I
that would
check it
help
every
us
time I get
greatly.
an email from Tracy.
Now, there is a way you can forward, I think, emails from one account to another, but I don't
But
know.
if you do that,
I know.
you still have,
Now,
if you forward it from your
Right.
town to your personal, it becomes your personal. Sorry,
Right.
didn't mean to interrupt.
Right, and Libby's absolutely correct, and when we supply it, the headers become part of that record. And so, yes, when we respond to it, if the responding individual is so serious, they will look at that header, that chain going, well, wait a minute, that went to his home account, so that means I get access to his home record to really make sure he didn't hide something from us.
Mhm.
So we're trying to really get you accustomed to only using your town-issued email
That's
for
fine.
business.
That's fine.
And that's something that I can talk further with Libby with, is to ensure that if there is a FOIA that's come in, if she can maybe give our office a heads up, so that I don't mind making the phone calls to each of you saying, get ready, there's an email coming to you, we got a FOIA that you're gonna have to handle. So we'll see if we can improve that level of communication, okay?
The only thing I would do is, I would suggest that you provide instructions on how to search the email client on this thing, because it's not intuitively obvious, and I'm an Apple user.
I don't know, so, that's a great question, and
Because I can search it like crazy on my Windows machine, just not on this thing.
right, and I need to, and with that, Dennis, I think that's a great point, that I need to have better understanding. Are these being saved back to a town server of any capacity for the email clients? And maybe that's something we could do on our side.
But, yeah,
Again, I know we don't have a full-time IT department for the
Right.
town, but maybe that's we need to do a little more research on that to see if there's a way we can try and centralize some of where
Okay.
our record storage is occurring.
Great.
So,
Thank you.
okay.
And your emails will be current no matter how old your operating system is on this thing, because we don't do anything with it as far as updating the operating systems.
Sure we do.
Yeah, we do. I got a thing here that
Are
says,
they done automatically?
no, but I got one that says, you know, there's updates to be done, so do it. Does that happen tonight?
Okay,
I'm up to
that's done
date.
automatically then.
Yeah.
Also, and while that kind of dovetails off of what we're doing, but it's a relevant point, maybe that's something we need to do for those who may not be as comfortable with technology, is maybe once a month or something, we're scheduling a time, or once every quarter, we schedule a time to have you bring in your piece of equipment, and we ensure that you have the most up-to-date, or there's no bugs or viruses or something on it. So
Yeah.
we can make a note on our side, and we'll figure out a system. I don't know what that is yet, but you put it on my to-do list now, and I'll figure something out for that, okay? So again, this is really important, so there is no document any one of you individually are issuing as a planning commission member. You're not writing correspondence, you're not doing any of that nature as a planning commission member. I wanna make that really clear to you.
Yeah, we're writing the comp plan.
No, that's different.
Go ahead.
You're writing it right now, that's work product.
Yes,
As a member of the planning commission. It's not
Right.
policy yet, nothing has been brought into a formal component, that's still working papers. That's a
Right,
whole
okay.
nother
right,
element
okay.
of
Yeah, yeah,
records.
right,
Okay,
right.
but that's voidable too.
Yeah, that is,
Sure,
Every time
absolutely.
you bring a draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
for
right,
review,
right, right.
it's-
Yeah, yeah,
it
and
becomes part
that's why
of the
we,
record.
that's why we get a copy of everything, and that becomes part of the agenda packet and part of what
Yeah.
we're
Right.
saving for you, so
Right.
yes. So in that regard, I say that to you because we have a secretary. Through your bylaws, you have an appointed secretary who does the official correspondence, and all they're doing is what has been enacted at a meeting. And that's a really clear distinction I want to make. So I don't issue letters on your behalf that didn't happen through meeting action. I just want to make you aware of that. So again, if there is correspondence, please send it to us, and we will be the repositories for this department, okay?
Mhm.
Moving on, so I'm gonna jump back to closed session. What might this body
Oh,
ever
th-
go into
th-
closed
this raises-
session
This
for?
raises another question on the same topic.
Sure,
If I have a need, month, 2, 3 months down the line, to send an updated economy chapter, I'll need instructions on how to do that without involving my personal email account. Because I use my personal email account to get it to you guys right now.
so you're not sending it from
Nope.
there?
Absolutely not.
Well,
Okay,
that-
Because he does it on his computer.
okay.
Yeah, you can't, you don't have the wherewithal to do stuff like that. So I guess what you could do is you could email it from your thing to your commission thing, and then send that from there to her.
Sure, yes, yes, yeah. But that would still show the header.
Well, so, and I say this, so you created it on your home computer, and you emailed it to me with a request, and say your content or your email cover letter is, Katie, here's the latest draft for discussion at the planning commission meeting,
Right.
whenever.
Right.
That's okay, I'm gonna say that's okay, that you're using your personal email to do that in, because you sent it to us, we now have it
Right.
to us to be included as part of the public record, I'm gonna
Okay.
retain your email, and I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
retain your document.
Okay,
And then I'm gonna provide it to the planning commission at the
That's
next
fine.
available
Okay.
meeting that we scheduled this for discussion.
that's fine.
So I'm okay with that, it's coming in through the public record,
Yeah, yeah, okay,
okay?
okay.
A quick
Sure.
question along those lines.
Please
Okay,
do.
because I'm trying to start thinking about using this. And then for emails, if you leave your home Wi-Fi and you're somewhere else and you're sending like 8 emails, they may not go then, but when you get home and it gets back on the Wi-Fi, will they then be sent? Does it remember that you attempted to send eight different mail messages and then they get sent when you get home?
Yes,
I mean, can you do that kind of work
drafts.
with it?
Yes. It shows should. But if you know you're been away, you might want to check your outbox in your email, because sometimes it might make you go in there and just hit resend.
That's why, I mean, when you're away, it usually accumulates in the outbox, but then that's all dumped when you get back to your home.
What I would
Wi-Fi.
do is I would check it once you get home to make
Yeah,
sure that
make
it's
sure that it
gone.
really
If
happened.
not, go
yeah.
in there and click on and resend them out of your outbox.
Okay?
Mhm.
So I think
Thank
that
you.
covers the important stuff under FOIA and the Public Records Act. There's a whole other section to the Public Records Act that we deal with, which are records retention. And there's a whole schedule that we follow that are issued by the Library of Virginia about how long we have to keep certain records. Some of them are permanent, some are time
Yeah.
allotted. They may be a year, maybe 3 months, it may be 5 days.
Ends up being part of the budget cycle.
Right, so we don't want you to be responsible to administer any of that. So as
Right.
long as you keep sending them to us, we will
Okay.
retain them,
Got
and
it.
we are working to ensure compliance with the Records Retention Act,
Great,
okay?
great,
I ask
thank you.
Yes.
clarifying question.
Sure.
Does this mean that, like, meeting notifications and things like that are not gonna come to our personal email anymore?
I'm trying to get away.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good point.
And so,
I have
so,
gotten so much on my frickin' plate. Jesus. Okay,
Hmm.
And when are the new iPads coming?
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
thank you.
so part of this is, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that Tracy and I have been working on is ensuring we actually give you a master calendar for the year. And we don't mean just a calendar of when your meetings are, but a calendar of when you should be getting agenda packets, when applications must be received by in order to go onto a particular agenda. And so you could take that calendar, once we are able to create it and put it out there and have you adopt it annually, put it into your Outlook calendar or whatever calendar you use personally to set your reminders, and put everything in there so that we don't have to send you notice of a meeting. We've already built it in.
Libby, is there a way to send from the town email server a notice to my email on this thing that there's a mail here I need to look at? Is there a simple way to do that?
No, I know, some people, mostly staff, and I think Smitty, the mayor, instead of using the town provided, phone, he has his email, so he has the ability to check his emails on his phone. We can set you up with that,
Oh,
but,
go ahead,
but
go ahead.
if, there's any issue under FOIA, they could potentially
Take your phone.
confiscate your personal phone.
Take your phone.
That's okay. They got to get through my password to get what's really important in here, so I don't care.
Torture you.
Yeah, I got the same issue.
I don't care, you know.
I mean,
It's my
I
data,
personally
it's not
have
theirs.
mine on my cell phone, I just have to take the chances.
Yeah, understand.
If you want to do that, let me know and we can, get you set.
Okay, because that may be one way of dealing with, I'll only look at this every so often, because now it's not coming to my personal email, so that was my prior trigger.
Right,
I got to find another trigger to make sure I look at this thing regularly.
right.
Yeah.
If anybody can think of a better trigger, I'm all
Well,
looking for it.
She has the calendar, if that calendar's set up that way, then you can export
You
it
can make
to your calendar, or you can
Reminders
just have
in
a,
the calendar.
look at that calendar. I mean, if it's gonna be at least a month out.
Yeah, put the calendar on this and put the reminders in this.
Yeah, well,
And then
typically what I do is every time I get a calendar, whatever it is, I keep it in iCloud and just keep that current to it. I just
Yeah.
sync it and be done with it.
I think you guys have all raised important points. I don't say I have the answers tonight how to solve them, but you've
Okay.
got me thinking,
Okay,
and my thinking isn't done yet. So I
Okay.
might have some thoughts to solving some of these problems. I just
Great.
don't have them fully fleshed out yet.
but I think that shows that we're paying attention.
I'd like to have an assistant. I'll give them my pay.
Okay,
With regards to FOIA, there's a refresher that's required every so often that needs to be logged. is that recorded with you or with Libby?
Libby's your FOIA officer for the town.
Right.
Right now, the required training under FOIA and conflict of interest FOIA is for elected officials only. But
Gotcha.
Oh.
as a town, could make it that, all the board members at least take
So it's
it.
elected officials, okay.
Because it's all electronic.
I would like to be
There is an
included.
online course offered through the FOIA Advisory Council that can be extended to you as well, yes. So Libby is absolutely correct. A lot of this community is exempt because of your population status. There's thresholds under the Code of Virginia at 3,500 or less population, there, you don't have to do some of these things. You still have to comply with FOIA, open meeting law, that you
Yeah,
still have to
right.
do. But in terms of who has to do the required trainings and certifications, some of it you don't have to do. I think this is important enough because this body and the work we do here does receive FOIA requests quite often for production of certain documents or information that might have come in your possession in considering applications coming before you.
Yeah.
So I want you to be familiar with why you're getting them, what the terms mean, and how we can help you best respond to them.
Okay.
So I'm going to come back to your closed session possibilities. Again, I don't know if you, as any member of the Planning Commission, have ever been into a closed session, but if you should, I would think there are going to be very limited sections in which you would go in for, and I've highlighted the top 4 that I think would qualify. Occasionally, we're going to deal with, especially in a conditional rezoning process that could happen here. We might be talking with a business entity that is going to share with us proprietary records, financial documents, something of that nature. Those, as part of that conditional rezoning application, would be considered proprietary. We don't make that declaration. They would have to include that as part of their application submission to us. And if that should happen, and we do need a reason to talk about it, we'd go into closed session under this section of the code. As you heard the other night, advice from counsel. And again, the council is at this point, you don't have your own legal counsel. As a planning commission, you don't.
Right.
And the counsel, that the legal counsel that the town uses is actually legal counsel to the town council themselves. That is who that counsel, that attorney is advising. So those are not records that we're privy to and can only be disclosed upon the release of the attorney and the client. And the client is the town council, so I wanted to make you aware of that, okay? And so if any of that should be submitted to us, and that may happen from time to time, that the town manager, the town council wants us to have that information, but may not want it released to the public at large, that's why we would go into closed session under that statute. You may not be aware of this, but this is, I felt important from time to time, is these last 2. If you weren't aware of this, the construction drawings for single-family dwelling homes that are coming in are actually not public documents that we get into the building office. So we wanted to make you aware of that. They are proprietary documentation a lot of the times. They're done by an engineer, an architect. It may be a company that mass produces these,
Okay.
but they're proprietary and they are not.
Paid to have them
They
done.
paid to have them done,
Right.
so they are
That's why.
not a public document. So we wanted to make you aware of that just in general.
Okay.
And then secondly is complaints. And this one comes up a lot, so we wanted to, again, keep you all informed across from this. The name, address, and phone numbers of a person who complains about another person as it relates to zoning, building code, or fire prevention code complaints are exempt from disclosure. So we wanted to make you aware of that if we need to discuss it, and we needed to talk about who the particular person was making the complaint, if that had some relevancy, and for you to know that, we would go into a closed session to have that conversation. So again, you cannot disclose that information to the public at large. So I know that comes up a lot when we're doing enforcement action is, well, who turned me in? Who made this? I can't tell you. I legally cannot tell that person. All I can do is, was the complaint valid, and do we need to do something about it? So, okay. Conflict of interest, I want to get into a little more specifics. As we said, you're exempt not from all of this, but some of the reporting requirements or disclosure statements you would have to make, you're exempt as a community. The town is under that 3,500 population threshold, and so some of this doesn't apply, but some of this does apply to everybody regardless. Pretty easy. You cannot take a bribe. You cannot accept a gift or something as a result of your position with the Planning Commission that would be perceived as influencing you in some way, means, or shape. In Virginia, that gift limit is set at $50. I think in some instances, there's a conversation to bring that up to 100, but I think it's set at 50 right now. Moving forward, the next one that they talk about under the conflict of interest is, do you have a financial interest in a business dealing with a locality or the agencies related to this locality? And this is, are you in business yourself? Do you run a business? Could that business have the ability to service the community in which it services in? So, for example, you're a banker and you run, what's our banks here? I can't even think of the name. NMA. So you're a banker, and does that prohibit you from being able to do have a banking relationship with the town of, say, running their payroll accounts or something? So this talks about that process of where you could have business interests and how that interaction can happen back to the community or not. So again, I'm not going to go into detail. You have a copy of this. You've gotten the entire act. We want to make you aware of this. 9 times out of 10, you need to disclose. If there's a potential of a conflict, put it on record. Let it be known to this body as a whole or to your appointing authority that you may have a conflict, and let them make the determination if that will inhibit your participation any further in the matter. Okay? There are some exceptions that we are talking about here. Sorry. So 1 through 4 and then 5 through 8 talk about the exceptions that will allow you to participate in some transactions with your locality. So again, I don't know if any of you are running a business right now. I don't know if any of you have family members working for the town or who have other relationships, personal or professional relationships, I should say, that you want to go into business with the town. If you want to provide them their toilet paper, if you want to be providing the cleaning services for the community, for the town buildings, or if you want to be providing engineering services or consulting services to the community. This will talk about what you would need to do and what considerations would need to be factored in if you would even qualify for that. I'm not sure if this really applies to you, but we want to inform you about it just in case, okay? And those are 8 exceptions, and you can read them at your leisure. So the last thing I really want to talk about is if you feel that there is a really direct personal interest in something that's coming before us. So so say we have the PUD, the Accomack Plantation PUD may be coming forward for amendment. Some of you live in Bay Creek.
Mhm.
Would you consider that a conflict under the conflict of interest? I'm not asking you to answer for me, but it gives you the pause. That's exactly what I'm trying to do, is get you to think of how these situations might apply to you. So part of this may be you disclose it. If that PUD is dealing with the entire PUD of all, however many acres it is, 18, more than 18, whatever it is, however many acres the Accomack Plantation PUD is, your interest may not be so narrowly construed that you couldn't act accordingly. It could be you're part of a greater community and you have no greater sway or influence within the Accomack County PUD,
Right, yep.
Accomack Plantation PUD that may come forward with their recommendations versus being able to evaluate it from your role as a planning commissioner. However, if you happen to live on Jefferson Street and you are petitioning with your neighbor to have that corner of Jefferson rezoned and you're the only two involved, yeah, you got a direct influence and interaction and conflict, and you would need to recuse. Thank you. I knew the word was there somewhere. Recuse yourself from acting upon that. And it's not just sufficient for you to say, oh, I'm not going to participate. You need to put on record at that meeting why you're stepping away, why you're going to recuse yourself. You need to indicate what the specific interest is. You have to publicly state that and put it on record. And that is part of the policy that also the town council adopted at their Thursday meeting, which you've now received a copy of.
Right, but the balance of the board votes on that.
Yes. And could determine that your interest is not so
That's right, that's
substantial
Right.
to prevent you from participating.
So it's not, yeah, it's not just,
Right.
oh, I don't feel like I wanna because of whatever. If it doesn't sound right, you vote no, or you're gonna vote.
Right, right, so I'll throw out another example. Say you happen to be one of the business owners on Mason, and we're now considering a massive, I don't know, policy that affects the whole of Main Street organization and our relationship with them. Do we think you as one business owner on Mason would be so significantly impacted that you can't act upon this consideration of what we're doing for all of Main Street? That gives you an example of how this could be applied, and as a board, we could say, we think you could, there's 70 of you there, we don't think you're gonna make that big of a difference, we think you should participate as a planning commission member. That's just an example I'm throwing out.
I have another,
Go ahead.
and because it's what it is. Historically, if we are going through and approving meeting minutes, and I wasn't at the meeting, I abstain.
That's different.
Okay,
Voting is different than conflict of interest. That is completely a different topic, yes. So your abstention is valid, and it's because you weren't there, so you can't, you can't vote onto the accuracy or
yeah, because,
content of the minutes,
Right.
absolutely.
okay.
This is
okay.
much different. This is saying, and so I'm gonna put out something else. So you may be, we got a conditional use permit coming in, and it's
Okay.
owned by a corporation.
Right.
Say the Rayfield Pharmacy Corporation. And
Mhm.
again, these are all fictional examples.
Right.
None of it is actual. I don't want anybody who's listening to the public thinking I'm really talking about Rayfield's Pharmacy
Right.
and their business enterprise. I'm
Right.
just picking a name.
Right.
So say they're a corporation, and they're made up of 15 shareholders, and you happen to be one of them.
Mhm.
I may not know that. That's something that you would need to disclose to us, to let us know what's going on, and there might
Yep.
be a conflict of interest in consideration of a
Right.
proposal coming forward
Yeah,
from
yeah.
that corporation.
Yep.
That's all.
Okay.
So that gives you some idea of what the conflict of interest, a personal interest in a transaction will do.
So the key is it's a financially, not a friendship kind of thing.
Correct, not a friendship. It's really a financial stake, a business stake, where you have a legal relationship.
Fiduciary
with some-
responsibility.
A fiduciary or legal responsibility occurring there.
Yep.
If you're unsure, feel free to talk to me.
Yeah.
If I'm not confident in what should be the reaction or how we should handle it, I'm gonna kick you up the chain. I'm gonna go to the town manager.
Right.
And I'm gonna say, there's a question that's been posed from a member on conflict of interest. I'd like you to talk to them. And
Okay.
he may then kick it up his chain to figure out who else should be involved or what sort of reporting. But we may have enough knowledge between us to figure out yay or nay.
Okay.
9 times out of 10, if we're in the gray area, we're gonna err on the side of caution and say disclose it, and then we'll figure out how we go from there.
Okay.
Disclosure is really important. Finding out after the fact, that's bad.
Yes. Yes.
As we all learned, the cover-up is always the worst. Sorry.
Yeah, right.
So that gives you the overview of conflict of interest. Any questions?
Yeah, the abstaining part, we may need to come back to the code of conduct or our bylaws, because it says no member person shall abstain from voting, and it has words,
Which
so
was
Right.
why I
And I'm
referenced
glad
that
you said,
chapter.
that's a good example.
Each,
Yeah,
each
right.
time on minutes, I know, and I don't know if you've done it every single time, but 9 times out of 10, somebody will tell me, I wasn't at this meeting, so I don't know. So usually that's somehow coming in through the comments when we're taking up minutes. I always hear that, so
Okay.
we can, I'll ask, you'll take that back to council on your side?
No, this is in your draft bylaws.
Oh, in the
Right.
draft bylaws, okay.
6, no, it's
Seven.
7-6.
7-6,
Thank
yes,
you.
yes, right.
And I don't want to get to a point where it's something that simple, and I go, okay, who has a motion to say he's abstaining,
Yeah, right.
second, and then a vote? But if that has to be done,
And if I have to declare, I can declare. That's not an issue.
Well, I mean, that's the way it's habitually been all the time. is
Right.
that, you know, and that's everywhere.
Right, that is everywhere, and so I can add some
I
language.
just want to make sure the word's in here.
Or-
you know,
or,
it's a paragraph.
Right,
Absent from meeting,
yeah. And you can restart on the bylaws anywhere you want now.
where matter was discussed. thank you for saying that. No,
No
that-
problem.
that's an easy fix we can put in here.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Yeah, I wondered about that.
okay. That's all I got for you tonight.
Oh, my goodness.
Really?
All right, well, great, Katie, thank you.
Yep.
So,
Yes.
I'm sure everybody's okay that, we'll pick this, the rest of this, or the next, at the next meeting, we'll pick up where we left off. So, following the agenda, any other business? I don't think we have any.
There's none on the agenda. I will make you aware for your September meeting. I think at this point, we've received 2 applications for conditional use permits. So we are just starting to look through those, so I think we're gonna be bringing those forward to start the calendar ticking on those.
And I guess one of those is what you kind of alluded to.
One is for an accessory dwelling in an accessory structure. What's the other one?
Another one's not on a commercial.
It's a commercial, I think the other one is on, it's a commercial, but it's conversion of the second floor for residential dwelling.
Okay.
That's that one. You're right, the other one I alluded to, I'm working with them, but I haven't gotten the application yet.
It's a Kellogg building.
Kellogg Building.
It's a Kellogg building, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
where's
And
the
we're
park?
okay to meet the day after Labor Day, right?
Yeah.
This
Everybody's
isn't a
fine
di-
with that?
Yes,
That's
So,
the seventh.
that's the 7th. Any announcements? Everybody can look at there. We have a work session scheduled, August 16th, population demographics, September 20th, community facilities, October 18th, transportation, and November 15th, land use.
Land use.
We felt that would be useful to keep this on the agenda, so we don't
Oh, yeah.
lose sight of who's
Yeah.
doing what.
That's a
I
good
like it.
idea.
And that's from 3 to 5 here.
Right.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
All right, we have a motion to adjourn in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.